My name is Sally. I'm 42 years old, office worker. My husband George is 2 years older and was originally my senior at work. He was a good worker and I respected him a lot. We had a son right after we got married and we had a happy family. However, the relationship between Mai and I started to fall apart at some. It is no exaggeration to say that the breakdown of our marriage was due in large part to my husband's passive aggressive behavior. My mother in law, in particular, did not like me from the beginning of our marriage. She was always picking on me in any could. However, my husband defended me in beginning, and he was my senior at work. We used to live in a rural area far from our parents-in-law's house. We managed to get by without seeing any of the time. But when our son was about to enter school, my husband got transferred. That location was also where I lived. In addition, my husband's new work was close to our in-laws' house. So, inevitably, we ended up living see them. I resigned from the company when my boss was transferred, looked for a new job in the area where we were going to live, and changed jobs. It was easier to work at this company than my previous job, where I had to finish work late into the night and there was a lot of overtime. I can afford to make elaborate dinners and box lunches for my son and husband. My mother-in-law often arrives at the same time as me. Every time this happens, it feels like a difficult and stressful situation because she is being bullied. Then, my in-laws planned a trip to a hot spring and invited me to join them. They said that they want to take me son on the trip.
What do you think about this?
When I asked my son this,
He replied, I can't go because I am with my club on the Saturday and Sunday.
my son plays baseball, which he has continued since junior high, and the high school he entered had a baseball team. So they have a training camp every early in the year.
See.
What? You don't mean to say that you're leaving, do you?
Yes, because I like hot springs.
Are you okay with that?
My son knows I'm being treated badly by my in-laws, and that even my husband has been rough with me lately. That's why he's worried I might get some way.
Well, I Evan be fine, right? If something happens to me, then that's it.
My son said, all right, and seemed satisfied for the time being. And before I knew it, it was the day of the spa trip.
Tomorrow, go rent a car and pick up Mom and then come back.
My husband said this to me while we were waiting in line at a store.
What? You're going to rent a car, and what are you going to do?
I'm tired from work today, so until the last minute tomorrow. Why don't you pick them up and come then? I'll join you. We're going to the same destination.
My husband is always doing this thing. He puts me in charge of everything. I've been working all day and into the evening. I'm doing the housework on top of that. I'm also the one who prepared the dinner he just ate. If anything, I think I'm more tired now than when I started. I've been picking up my father-in-law and just lazing around, making it sound like he's the only one who's tired of working. When we were first married, he did the housework. When my son was younger, George was very helpful with the housework. As our son got older, my husband's job responsibilities have increased, and he has less time for housework, but he still helped me clean up the house for 3 days straight. Sometimes he cooked for us. But after my in-laws started coming, my husband stopped doing housework completely. That's because my mother-in-law when my husband was doing the housework, I'd ask, why is George doing the housework? It's the wife's job. And she would. The breadwinner of the family should have a secure job. Since she said this to him every time, he gradually got brainwashed and stopped doing the housework. And then he said, that's right, the need for me to do the housework. Why did you let me do it all this time? going as far as to blame me. And when it got to that point, it was out of my control. And I don't think I can make it right. My husband has changed drastically past few years. The reason he got transferred to that place was because his job wasn't going well. He takes it out on me every day. But when I try to argue with him, he tries to reason with me and never backs down. I've become so annoyed with him that I've decided to just let him be. It's the most stress-free way to live. I thought about divorce, but my son private high school and the tuition expensive. When I thought about putting him in college, I realized that he was not ready. I felt that being a single parent was much of a challenge, so I couldn't handle the divorce. I've come to think of my husband as man who's a bit of a pain in the butt, but I can bear with it as long as he makes me some money. When I think in this way, I'd feel stressed out. I thought that I didn't have to take risk to get a divorce. Here we are. I joined this trip because it was a hot spring resort that I love, so I knew I could enjoy it even if do it alone. If I wanted, I could separate my in-laws from my husband. Perhaps I am seen as the designated driver. My husband and father-in-law can't both be wrong. At any rate, I figured I shouldn't say anything to my husband. I went to get the rental car, like he said, and went to pick up my in-laws.
Sally, aren't you a little late? What is this car you're driving? Why didn't you get a bigger car? Well, it's better than your mini car.
I usually use the minute car that I bought. I commute to work by car, so I paid myself, assuming I would use it most of the time. I don't often go out for long distances, though a mini car would be enough. And besides, I also liked the interior, the color, so I bought it. And yet, my husband drives it without permission and also lets my in-laws use it. My in-laws complain that it's a mini car. They look down on me, saying that I can only afford a small one. So I had to go out of my way to take a car for the trip. He could drive up to our house and to the spring resort. Would be the smoothest way. But my father-in-law said he doesn't drive, and he doesn't want anyone else to care. For such a selfish reason, I rented a car and my husband and I, but in the end, my husband, who switched with me on the way, was awake all night. So I drove all the way to the destination. While my husband was sleeping, my father-in-law still complained about my driving, saying things like, the best way is to go and stay in the right lane. He would also tell me that I could a right turn when there was clearly traffic, and when I slow down because I know it's going to turn red, he'd say, why didn't you go? It's depressing. My mother-in-law, who doesn't have a driver's license, also joins in on my driving conversations. I don't want my mother-in-law who drives to tell me what to do. And at least I'm better than my father-in-law, who has crashed his car at least 5 times for real. I tell him he should return his license before he gets in a big accident. He says, don't treat me like an old man. I'm not to blame for all the accidents that have happened. He's still driving. Well, I didn't want to get into a car with my father-in-law. So I don't mind if I drive, but it's really distracting for me to have interruptions every single time. I mean, he leans over from the back, says this and that, so his spit flies into my hair, and it's disgusting. When we reach our destination, my husband finally wakes up.
Oh, that was surprisingly quick.
I was really annoyed with my husband for doing that so casually. I was tired from being in the car all day. I wanted to stay at an inn for the day, but didn't go out with my in-laws. I went to the hot spring to wash my hair and took a walk around the hotel. With that, I was able to make my time. We all had dinner together and then went to our rooms. By the way, I was alone in a single trip, so my husband shared a room with his brother. There are a lot of things to be said, But to tell the truth, I feel comfortable this way. I still took my time in the hot springs, then returned to the room. I had a beer and snacks from the store, watched TV, and had a relaxing time. I wonder if my son is having a nice with his baseball teammates. He was at a car wash fundraiser. Is he talking or playing games in his shared room? I would probably get some calls from my mother-in-law around this time. So I decided not to do anything. We'll talk about how the trip went on getting home. Before I knew it, it was already mid. I got under the covers and went to... The next morning, I woke up with an eerie feeling in the air. Oh, how I wish I could have mornings like this all the time. It's still 2 hours before the break that my in-laws told me. 6:30? That's early. It's become so ingrained in my body. I have to get up early enough to make lunch. That's right. Since I'm here, I might as well take a hot bath. I went to the hot spring again, and the water slowly. The weather was beautiful, so the ocean was very pleasant. I went back to my room and called let him know I was coming home this. As I recall, he said he would be back tonight. So, depending on how the trip goes, I thought I might have to ask him to home alone. I sent a message, packed my bags, put on my makeup, and since it was almost 8:30 a.m., we went to have breakfast. I was supposed to have breakfast with my in-laws. I went to the room where the three were staying, but no matter how many times I knocked, there was no response. Maybe they had already gone ahead of one. I had no choice but to go to the bathroom. But there was no sign of my in-laws. The breakfast room was not that big. If I went around to all the tables, be able to find them soon. I sent a message to my husband, but reply, I thought it was impossible, so where did you go to check? They told me that my husband had already finished his breakfast. They told me breakfast was at 8:30. But in fact, the breakfast room was earlier than that. My in-laws and husband intentionally about the time went to the trouble of telling me to eat at a. I was not supposed to come in the breakfast room early. My mother-in-law told me, we'll pay you later. Her words were a lie. I would have to pay for 2 rooms. Of course, I would not have a car. In short, my in-laws had planned to come behind us and return home on their own. I was so pissed off, but in a way, feel better. If you're going to do that, then I do this. I went to the breakfast room with a mind and elegantly enjoyed the buffet breakfast. Well, then, what should I do now? While I was thinking about that, my mother-in-law called me.
Excuse me, where are you?
That's what I said, and my mother-in-law was laughing.
I thought that since we were going on vacation, we should enjoy spending time together as a family.
If that's the case, you didn't have the trouble of leaving me here. Why didn't you just come with the truth from the beginning?
We only brought you along to pay for an accommodation, but you still got to come to your hot spring resort and have a nice meal. You should be grateful.
If that's the case, they should have just gone by themselves. Why should I go out of my way to pay for my husband and in-laws accommodations? I'm so angry with my in-laws. It's just a sign.
Well, then we'll just go sightseeing home first. Why don't you run back, Sally? I don't know how many days it would, though.
My mother-in-law was laughing like a hyena. As you can imagine, I don't like being off like this.
Is George driving?
I told her to put me on speakerphone so she could hear me. Then my mother-in-law seems to have arrived, and I can hear my husband's voice.
What's up? What the hell do you want?
Were you going to leave me from the beginning?
Don't be so angry, haha. You liked the hot springs here, didn't you? Why don't you go relax by yourself? But you have laundry to do, and John is coming home from training. Come home this evening and do your chores properly.
Hearing my husband's voice, who seemed so happy to make Me obey him. There was no restraint in me anymore.
What? You shouldn't even do your own laundry.
Hey, don't act like that. I'm the head of the household. Even more so, I'm the one who's telling you to take it easy. When normally you should be the one saying thank you, right?
That's so old-fashioned and lame. Ski shouldn't do that.
What? You're so cocky.
Oh, don't worry about my words. Because today is the last time see you.
Both my husband and in-laws sounded at the same time.
I haven't seen today. So, last night's dinner at the hotel was great, wasn't it? Uh-huh.
What do you mean?
I heard my husband's upset voice, so I quickly responded.
Because I'm divorcing you.
What?
You know, just about a year ago, you confronted me with divorce papers, right?
My husband's attitude had changed as moved in, but around this time last year, it was particularly cold. I couldn't stand it any longer and questioned him about it. He suddenly became angry and confronted the divorce papers. I was upset at the time, and I was concerned about our student loans and other things. So I decided to get a divorce from him. After that, my husband immediately.
Please pretend that we never discussed divorce. I'm sorry for my emotional outburst.
So we decided to stay married, but there is no doubt that I harbored a deal of distrust toward my husband. So I secretly hired a detective investigate him. It seemed like he had an old friend from high school. They met again a little while later and began to talk. She was a single mother with a middle school daughter. I think he tried to leave me to be woman he was having an affair with, but he was probably turned down. He probably felt that it would be a disadvantage for him to leave me at that point and only pay child support and be single. Besides, if he had me to do the housework, he wouldn't have to do anything himself. In short, I was treated as a convenient housekeeper from then on. Well, I also get some money from him and treated him like an old man, so it's the same. But I kept the evidence of the affair gathered from the agency to use it as a bargaining chip if C happens.
Even if it was a past affair, it's a year,
So I can get a divorce at your fault. As I said that, I heard a surprise. My father-in-law and mother-in-law have a speakerphone. It seemed that they didn't think Mai was having an affair. Then I decided to say something else that surprised them even more.
just because you've been demoted and your salary has dropped dramatically doesn't mean that I won't mercilessly charge you with alimony.
Again, I hear my in-laws surprised.
How could you be so arrogant when I'm much as you do? Even though I earn the same amount, I pack lunches for you and John. I clean the house and make dinner for both of us, right? You got left behind and had a cushy the time, but you always talked about how tired you were and how you were the breadwinner of your family.
I said things that hurt him more and more, and he became silent.
I stayed married to you because I was thinking about our child's tuition and all that. I did some research and I found out that even if I became a single mother, I could still qualify for financial aid. My parents are willing to help, so I realized that I don't need you. Plus, you'd be paying alimony and support, okay? I'd rather have a happy, stress-free life, even if it means losing a bit of income. So, I'm filing for divorce. Enjoy your day of sightseeing without worry.
My in-laws were calling my name in. George was stuttering and about to say something, but I didn't care and hung up the phone. The bus to town was just about to arrive, so I got on the bus and went to the station, then took the train to my house. I was so relieved to be able to say things I wanted to say to my husband. So I had some lunch and beer. I caught the bus at the right time, so I was home before. I was glad that my husband had confidence in me to complete it at that time. And while I was packing my things, came home.
Oh, aren't you home early? I mean,
When I told him what had happened, me lightly saying, "I told you so."
But if you divorce him, I'll stay W.
My son didn't seem to be bothered by it. Well, he's a sophomore in high school. I guess he somehow understood that my relationship with my husband was not a threat.
Well, I'm gonna pack up my stuff.
John packed his bags quickly and left because I had called my parents to pick us up. While I was still on the train, when my parents arrived by car, my son transported the heavy stuffed trunk. That's what you'd expect from a baseball player. My husband doesn't exercise at all. We moved into the new house. He kept saying, "Oh, it's heavy." And it's so heavy, complaining about it and being pathetic. In no time at all, my son and I finished loading our things and headed to my parents' house. In the meantime, I kept getting phone calls from my husband and in-laws. So after we had arrived and I calmed down a bit, I called them back.
Finally, you picked up. Hey, why are you answering the phone?
Can you answer the phone whenever you're available?
Don't be ridiculous. I haven't even filed for divorce yet.
Even if you say so, you and I are so now. I kept the divorce papers you confronted me with before. I've filed them. So all I have to do now is ask you for alimony and child support. Aside from that, I only need to go to my lawyer about those.
Wait a minute. Sally, please reconsider. It's true. I betrayed you once. But don't worry, you're all I see now. I'll take care of you again.
I was so sickened by my husband's sea that I almost threw up the lunch I had eaten.
Just how weak-minded are you? I don't have a shred of love left in me for you. Why don't you try again with your message? Oh, but she's already remarried now, though.
What do you mean?
My husband was surprised to find out the truth. Apparently, even if he couldn't remember that, his mistress would still feel for him, even though they had parted once. Why do men have such stupid ideas? I found out that his affair partner had remarried when I was filing for alimony. She told me that she would pay me and asked me not to do anything to him. She also apologized for having decided to just get a larger alimony. So it doesn't matter how much money I have to pay for my son's tuition. My husband also paid alimony and child support. George couldn't pay with his own salary. He asked his parents to pay him back. They didn't think their son would that kind of trouble. They were so shocked that they were for a while. Parental stupidity at its finest. But I was able to punish my in-laws. Let's just say that's a good thing. After that, everything was resolved, moved into a rented apartment with. My son has grown up to be a good boy, just the same as he was. Today, I'm at his baseball game with my parents. My son looks so dignified when he's sewn the batter's box, and he looks so cool and mature. The metal bat catches the ball with a loud cannon, I hear, and my son gets a hit and scores a run. He raises his fist to his teammate's base. As I thought about how I want to continue watching my son grow up and taking good care of him, I applauded John's success with joy.